Gentlemen, congratulations for the series, Sam, a Saxon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, not a problem, not a problem. So tell us what actually spawned the idea to create this series with you two?
Let me start with the beginning. I used to be a rap musician, and we had a pretty political rap group called Brothers Keepers, and we had planned a school tour through the East of Germany, and before we did that school tour, we received death threats from Nazis. And so we needed security, and Samuel Meffire, like the real Sam, he was one of our security people. That was in 2001, and he back then told me his story, and back then I thought this is something that needs to be on the screen, but it took a while. So 2006, Jörg had hired me. He was the producer. I was the actor on a detective show called Soko Leipzig. We tried to make a cinema movie out of it, but the market wasn't ready again. And so now in 2018, we picked it up again, and now we're here talking to you.
Wow, that is actually pretty fascinating. So all of this is done with Sam's blessing. Could you tell us about using his story and filling it with fictional accounts to make it more riveting? Because I binged it from the beginning to the end.
That's nice.
That's good. You liked it?
I did love it, yes.
Yeah.
Good.
I think, there was not so much to make up. It's one of those stories that are so unbelievable. And both in terms of the world it happens in, because I don't know how familiar you are with German history, but after the wall came down, East Germany was basically, the old system had gone, the new system hadn't moved in, so it was what I like to call the Wild East, and there were a lot of neo-Nazis there, and so you have this black German man who was a cop, which was very unusual at the time, and then who becomes promoted to being a Nazi hunter. He becomes a media sensation, and finally, his journey takes all these twists and turns that you have seen. We didn't have to make it up. We basically had to compress it into a season, because you could have made 3 seasons out of the material that his life gives. And I would say of course, it's a fictional story, so it's not everything you see happened exactly the way we are depicting it in the series, but I think we stayed very much true to the psychology, his inner struggle, his goals, the obstacles he faced and the decisions he took and the dilemmas he found himself in.
I love the series is because it tackled the idea of racism and xenophobia in the storyline, but it seems like it blended the two as if it was the same thing. In Germany, is that the same thing in your perspective? Because I know in the United States we treat them differently.
Could you explain it again?
Ausländerfeindlichkeit und Rassismus.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well,
Which I've seen.
For a long time it was seen as the same thing, I would say. Like non-white people were called foreigners in Germany for a very long time. Yeah. And hence we have like a scene where the female poet Maya Yim, she explains the term Afro-German, which was back then a way to explain to Germans that you can be German even though you're not white, but that wasn't, Germany had a different approach to many other European countries, so also America. It wasn't, you weren't automatically a part of this system if you didn't have the right color, and that's slowly changing, luckily.
Yeah, I mean, basically, Germany was a very white country when we were children, and that has changed because it has become a country of course, more and more immigration, but it was completely normal for people to think that, until very recently, I think 20 years ago, we had laws in Germany that were saying if you weren't born to German parents, which meant usually most of the time you were white, you could not get German citizenship. So because of our, very different colonial history from Great Britain, United Kingdom, or France, we basically had a very quite homogeneous population, white population, and that has changed dramatically over the past decades, and the laws have been changed too. So now, it's a very different world from even 20 years ago when we first tried to sell the show.
Yeah. Especially now, I mean, after Black Lives Matter, which also had a very strong impact here, I would say this also has changed a lot, that we talk about racism now in a different way than we used to.
Yeah.
You know, back in the days, if you would say something is racist, it would automatically be tied to being, a Nazi, or having problems with Jewish people. Now we slowly starting to understand in Germany as well that racism is very much also a structural thing, and that we've been looking at the world through a white lens, and that's like slowly breaking up, luckily, and we hope that with the series that we created, we can add a further step to that understanding.
It's very interesting, I'm very interested in the American perspective, because we've had together, when Tyron was still an actor on this crime show that we did together, we went to TV festivals where we were nominated, and we ran into, for example, into the cast of CSI, and the Black American actors back then, and that's like 15 years ago.
Yeah, probably.
They couldn't believe that Tyron was German. So that's also strange, no? And so, we think there's a really interesting conversation to be had also, within the American context. There's different opinions looking at this story of a Black German man.
So it is easy to conclude that the timing is perfect for the series to come out now.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, we would have loved to see it 15 years ago, but the timing is perfect also because now we have, since the arrival of the streamers like Disney Plus, they're looking for original content, they're looking for new perspectives, and I think they saw that this is something that is very specific locally, and it's a true story, which is also always really appealing, based on a true story, but it's also very universal, I think, Sam's experience.
And from a political standpoint, I think it's even easier for us to tell the story how we wanted to tell it now, because 15 years ago there weren't terms like microaggressions. People didn't know what white privilege was. We wouldn't talk about structural racism. So now we have like a better general understanding of the topic that we are trying to address as a subtext, so to say, in the series. So yeah, it turned out good.
Well, one last thing before I leave, had Sam seen the series, and what was his thoughts on it?
We did a screening for him. I mean, he read the scripts, and he came to the set sometimes, and then we showed him the finished series just before Christmas, and so we've had these we had these two lives basically, have been juggling these two lives in our heads and in our minds for 2 years, right? There's Samuel, the real man, and there's Sam, the character. And you watch the series, of course, you're in the editing and you think about, how can I do this? You have very specific thoughts about how to tell the story in the best possible way. And then you're sitting next to the real man.
I was very nervous.
Whose life, they gave us, the responsibility for making this series about his life, and he has children, he has a wife, it's himself and the whole political. And so it was nerve-wracking. But we binged it with him, and he said, yeah, you did, the psychological truth, you really hit it. So that made us very happy.
That's a compliment.
That's a compliment. We took that as a real compliment.
Well, it's excellent. Well, hey, gentlemen, congratulations again on Sam as Saxon. I can't believe the story, but it did happen. So
it did happen. Believe us.
Yeah. Thank you very much for bringing this to the screen for us. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.